100 years before Bitcoin experiences a supply shock, XRP might do the same. Take a moment to consider that. The so-called crypto king may not become scarce for another 100 years, but XRP may hit its own form of extreme scarcity all at once. When I considered the potential consequences for XRP's future value, the thought sent shivers down my spine. At first look, it sounds crazy. After all, shouldn't Bitcoin be the scarce one? The infamously limited supply of Bitcoin is unique among digital assets, isn't it? Very quickly, I'm afraid. After you hear this, you'll know why some are already speculating about XRP reaching triple digits in the future. The truth is about to flip the whole story on its head. Your money is not being advised by this. A discussion I came upon the other night on Twitter about cryptocurrency completely halted my regular doom and hype cycle. It cited research from an asset management with multi-billion-dollar holdings and said that XRP will immediately face a huge supply shock. I figured I'd do my own research since I've been in the cryptocurrency industry long enough to recognize empty promises. What I found made me question my entire understanding of XRP's tokenomics, I must say. In addition, I must warn you before we delve any further. The XRP Millionaire Blueprint is something you should definitely acquire if you intend to seize the opportunity presented by this change. The pinned comment below has the link. To help you understand the big picture of XRP's potential future, the role of this supply shock, and how the demand side could light up like a spark on parched grass, I have included a comprehensive roadmap, document, infographic, videos, and more within. It's brief but powerful, and you should study it before the market wakes up. See it after the video, which is pinned below. All right, I'll explain it in simple terms now. Simply put, XRP has the potential to dominate the next decade in a manner that no one anticipated once you grasp how this works. The supply of XRP has been the primary target of criticism for quite some time. Some would argue that with 100 billion tokens in circulation, its value is artificially inflated and that it cannot compete with Bitcoin or Ethereum in terms of price scalability. That seemed reasonable for quite some time. When compared to Bitcoin's 21 million, XRP's maximum supply of 100 billion makes it appear bloated. This, however, is the rub. This whole argument rests on a misconception. Not all of those tokens are floating around, and the way XRP's supply works is very different from what most people think. In 2017, Ripple prevented a torrent of XRP from reaching the market by locking up a large amount in escrow. They devised a mechanism where 1 billion XRP is issued monthly instead of dumping everything at once. It may seem like a lot, but hold on a second. In reality, Ripple does not utilize the entire billion. Most months, only around 300 million XRP remain in circulation, with the remaining 700 million being relocked into new escrow contracts. That means that monthly, the market can only really handle around 300 million new XRP. The intriguing part begins when you run the calculation forward. The escrow will be exhausted by 2035 if the current rate of releases is maintained. Put another way, XRP will not be injected monthly anymore within the next 10 years or so. Period. A drip feed is terminated. It's not some imaginary year in the future. In crypto terminology, it's coming up soon. The conservative case is different, though. What will happen if XRP adoption increases at a rapid pace? What will happen if Ripple begins to spend a larger portion of that billion on a monthly basis? How about 400 million, 500 million, or even more instead of 300 million remaining in circulation? The time frame for the escrow process suddenly shortens. Based on their simulations, analysts have determined that the escrow might run dry by 2033 or possibly sooner, depending on the consumption scenario. Furthermore, in a most hypothetical scenario, the entire escrow could disappear in as little as 3 years if Ripple ever chose not to relock anything whatsoever. This is the turning point, so let's take a moment to halt. End of story as soon as escrow closes. The system is not receiving any new XRP. There is a permanent cutoff for the faucet. The true genius of XRP's architecture becomes apparent at that point. You see, there's a little cost associated with every XRP transaction, a fee that is destroyed, burned forever, rather than a charge that is paid to miners or validators like Bitcoin or Ethereum. It may not seem like much, just a few cents here and there, but it builds up over time. This method has already been used to burn over 14 million tokens since the debut of XRP. That burn rate increases in direct proportion to the network's utilization. Therefore, consider the period following the escrow process. No additional XRP is being added to the circulation, and the amount already there is decreasing daily due to the insidious effect of those modest fees. At that point, XRP supply begins to decrease rather than increase, marking a shift from inflationary to deflationary pricing. Furthermore, it is intrinsic to the ledger. Take Bitcoin as an example. Coin after coin, every 10 minutes, like clockwork, Bitcoin will continue to be mined all the way until 2140. That's over 100 years away from the date when Bitcoin supply will genuinely run out. Is XRP? For XRP, it might happen in the next 10 years, a full century before the predicted date. A number of notable figures are keeping an eye on the situation because the timelines are completely different. For the simple reason that the transition from XRP's release mode to its scarcity phase is quite real. The formula is simple. The number of months until the escrow is spent can be counted down by hand. The supply can only go downhill from that point onward. A genuine supply shock starts with that. However, there are other factors that are reducing the availability of XRP. DeFi is going to have a huge impact soon. You can create a synthetic version of XRP and lock it into a vault. Then you can use it for staking, lending, yield farming, and more. Projects like Flare are currently developing wrapped XRP as collateral. That first XRP remains locked. What about the prices? Millions, if not billions, of XRP might be frozen in this manner. A staggering 8 billion XRP have been taken from the market and are now languishing in smart contracts untouched, while investors seek yields using the packaged versions. That amounts to 13% of the total supply that may be removed from circulation. Just to give you an idea, just picture a world where 13% of the world's gold is vaulted and kept inaccessible for years. That shock would undoubtedly be felt by the market. Yes, we are moving in the direction of that type of dynamic with XRP. And that's not all. The number of institutions is growing. Some speculate that corporate treasuries, asset managers, and hedge funds are covertly amassing XRP holdings. When businesses began using Bitcoin in their financial statements, we witnessed the same strategy in action. When you add in the rumblings about an XRP ETF, which might be approved sooner than anyone expects, you have a perfect storm of increasing demand and decreasing supply. Equity-based investment funds do not purchase assurances. The ETF market makers would have to go out and purchase XRP to support their shares since they purchased the actual asset. That is the essence of persistent purchasing pressure. Take a step back and assess the situation from a high level of abstraction. One group consists of escrow releases that will expire during the next 10 years. As XRP is permanently burned by fees, supply flatlines, and subsequently tilts into deflation. The other side is that billions of XRP are being locked away by DeFi technologies. Lots of money is going into institutions and maybe exchange-traded funds. But what about demand in retail? Still experiencing explosive growth around the world, particularly in XRP's cost and speed hegemony in payment corridors and remittance markets. A supply shock would be perfectly justified by this scenario. The price has to go up to level out because there are too many buyers and not enough tokens. And now things start to heat up. Reason being, the long-standing claim that the supply is too large to allow XRP to climb is going to end soon. Actually, the supply of XRP isn't just limited, it's getting tighter. With each passing month, the escrow period draws to a close, the burn count rises, and XRP is removed from circulation as more and more use cases, including as payments, DeFi, and institutional holdings, are implemented. All the time, the dynamics are changing. There has never been a time when XRP has been the subject of such heated debate. The striking thing is not merely the price movement or the legal struggle with the SEC, but also the change in financial mood. The public's awareness of XRP and its possible function in the financial system is being planted by opinion pieces, think tanks, and even mainstream media. When stories like this start popping up in publications like Forbes or MSN, it's not just idle discussion, an experimental balloon. In doing so, we can gauge public opinion and lay the framework for future endeavors. This is a pivotal moment because these narratives are emerging at the same time as the world economy is experiencing strain, which may necessitate the implementation of innovative solutions. You need to step back and examine the systemic forces in the financial system if you want to know why XRP might be gaining popularity right now. Uncle Sam has racked up a national debt of more than 40 trillion. A growing percentage of the federal budget is going into interest payments, which are increasing in size. The Treasury's demand has always been supported by foreign buyers, but now even they are starting to be wary. The Japanese government has been protecting its currency by selling treasuries. China has been subtly selling off its assets. Diversification is driving even the smallest nations. That is to say, America can no longer count on global support to subsidize its expenditure indefinitely. At times like these, governments seek out solutions that are out of the ordinary, which threatens the whole essence of the now. We may learn from the past that major financial resets never occur gradually. They show up out of nowhere, summoned by an emergency. Social Security was established during the Great Depression. Our current fiat currencies are not backed by gold because of the Bretton Woods Agreement. Thanks to the financial crisis of 2008, Bitcoin was born. We need to know what the next catastrophe brings. The widespread use of settlement systems built on the blockchain is one possible explanation, according to some. When it comes to that, XRP is in a class by itself. Let me break it down for you. The issue of cross-border settlement is becoming too big to ignore, and XRP provides a solution to this. Even though it hasn't undergone any major changes in decades, the communication system SWIFT is still used to transfer trillions of dollars. Settlement is a tedious, costly, and mysterious process. Instead of releasing funds for expansion, banks lock them up in Nostro and Vostro accounts, stifling liquidity. There is no doubt that a more dependable, less expensive, and quicker method will be embraced. We just need to know when. The system is provided by XRP, and for more than 10 years, Ripple has been constructing the infrastructure by partnering with financial institutions, payment processors, and remittance companies. Everything is in place. Just a trigger will do it. Here is when the timing in October gets interesting. Midway through October may mark a turning point, according to analysts, opinion writers, and industry insiders. Why? Reason being, fiscal quarters and meetings of central banks are common cycles in global finance. An annual meeting of the International Monetary Fund takes place in October. At about that time, the U.S. government encounters funding conflicts. Turbulence in the bond markets is common during the fall. To sum up, financial tremors have traditionally surfaced in October. It would not be unexpected for hints to surface around this time if a major development is imminent. Now, though, let's get down to brass tacks. Although Bitcoin is still the most well-known name in the cryptocurrency industry, XRP is far from alone. As an alternative, how about Bitcoin? Institutions and governments should be looking at the crypto industry's progenitor, not XRP. It all comes down to the design. A decentralized, censorship-resistant digital gold store of value, Bitcoin was built. Its energy consumption is high, its throughput is poor, and its governance is deliberately slow. Those features make it a great long-term investment or hedge, but also make it impractical for rapid settlement. However, XRP was built with payments in mind from the start. With almost instant finality and almost no cost, this ledger can process thousands of transactions every second. That layout is spot on for the needs of financial institutions. Next, we have the legal considerations. When the SEC sued Ripple, it wasn't just targeting one business. It was trying to set standards for the whole cryptocurrency market. Important victories for Ripple in court shift the focus. Institutions no longer see XRP as a speculative token only. Its reputation as a digital asset that has stood the test of time in the court of law is growing because regulators despise ambiguity. That difference is significant. Institutions will generally stay away from coins that are classified as securities. Assuming it isn't a security risk, opportunities will present themselves. XRP has weathered the storm and emerged even stronger. In addition, geopolitics is an important consideration. A covert but fierce financial conflict has broken out between China and other rising powers and the U.S. There have been requests for new payment systems and currencies that might potentially dethrone the dollar. Alternative payment alternatives to the U.S. dollar are being considered by the BRICS countries. The United States government needs a cross-border asset that doesn't necessitate foreign nations to keep massive amounts of treasuries if it wants the dollar to remain dominant in the digital age. In that capacity, XRP excels. In the background, it can maintain the dollar's primacy while acting as a bridge between currencies and providing neutral liquidity. This is why there are XRP believers who think there is a covert adoption strategy. Despite the conspiratorial undertones, it is historically rare for governments to leave their movements until the last possible second. Think about how fast the United States abandoned the gold standard in 1971. The suspension of dollar convertibility into gold was abruptly and publicly declared by President Nixon on live television. All of a sudden, the world's monetary system shifted. Is it possible that digital assets could experience a similar fate? It would not be surprising to see a swift shift towards settlement based on blockchain technology if the debt crisis worsens, bond buyers pull back, and liquidity freezes. Furthermore, the tools will not be custom-made in the event that this pivot occurs. They will be retrieved from companies that have already exerted the necessary effort. Those tools have been developed by Ripple for more than 10 years. That is the big picture. Is the micro still relevant? For the typical XRP investor who keeps an eye on the market every day, what does this imply? Patience is put to the test here because they fluctuate between extremes of joy and sadness. Crypto cycles are extremely harsh. As a result of legal ambiguity, XRP has been undervalued for a long time, and other assets have outperformed it. That leads to annoyance. However, acceleration can occur rapidly when catalysts align. Keep in mind that the markets are prospective. Rather than waiting for notifications, they eagerly await them. Before news reports confirm it, price action will show that significant institutions are secretly prepping for XRP adoption. Reason enough to give more weight than first impression to the MSN opinion item. It's not the article that affects markets. Rather, it heralds a change in what is considered appropriate discourse. There has been a shift in the public's perception of once marginal topics, such as the integration of XRP into the global financial system. Like Overton's window, it shows the spectrum of opinions that are generally accepted in a given conversation. Even while that window is changing, XRP is still within it. Paradigm shifts always start like that. But let's not lose sight of reality either. Adoption may not occur. Obstacles do exist. Not only pilot programs, but actual volume should be the result of Ripple's cooperation. Instead of relying on an external token, governments have the option to create their own CBDCs or digital currencies issued by the central bank. New technology may come out that competes. Regulators still have a hard time trusting crypto due to the many scandals and breakdowns that have plagued the industry. There is no such thing as a little obstacle. Their importance must be recognized. However, the most important thing is this. For XRP to be successful, the entire banking system is not need to be replaced. A little percentage of settlement flows is all it requires to create a huge demand. Every single day, $7.5 trillion changes hands in the foreign currency market worldwide. Unprecedented utility-driven demand would result from even a small fraction of that volume settling through XRP. The imbalance that thrills investors is that very thing. To rule the world, XRP isn't necessary. For it to be meaningful, that's all. At that point, timing becomes the deciding factor. Perhaps the spark will ignite in October, most likely so. Would more time be required? In a word, yes. On the other hand, past experiences show that adoption changes happen quite quickly. Prior to its unexpected importance, the internet was mostly disregarded for a long time. Before they became indispensable, smartphones were made fun of. Settlement solutions that are built on the blockchain also run the risk of this happening. An even stronger incentive exists for financial adoption, which is the main distinction. Practicality takes a back seat to the imperative of staying alive. When the strain becomes too great, governments and institutions will act swiftly. The prudent thing to do, then, is not to take at face value the rumors floating about regarding October, such as opinion pieces appearing or insiders hinting at a major surprise. This is to make connections. Can you tell me the underlying structural forces? In what ways are demands intensifying? How do such demands compare to the current tools? A possible inflection point can be identified in this way. All things considered, XRP's narrative is one of potential, a digital asset's potential to go from specialized to foundational with a focus on payments. The likely occurrence of countries implementing non-traditional approaches to debt crises, it is possible that a token that has been hidden for a long time could emerge into the limelight. October may or may not bring fireworks, but the path is obvious. Things are changing, the groundwork is in place, and people everywhere are looking for solutions. It's possible that XRP is one of them. Investors and spectators have always found it challenging to understand XRP since its narrative extends beyond price charts. This isn't your average investment token. It's an effort to reimagine the monetary infrastructure upon which the world economy rests. It's reasonable that many would brush that allegation off because of how high it is. A pattern, however, becomes apparent when one steps back and observes the development of narratives, infrastructure, and legal clarity. What seemed like pure science fiction is now creeping into the realm of possibility, and who knows, maybe even the inevitable. Reflect on the past 10 years. Despite incessant doubt, numerous setbacks, and a lawsuit from the SEC that might have killed the initiative, Ripple has persisted, but it keeps on going, changing and growing. Major financial institutions in the MENA region and Asia have secretly evaluated its platform. Its efficacy has been tested by remittance providers in corridors such as Mexico and the Philippines. The potential use of its ledger for digital currencies has been investigated by central banks. Although none of this made headlines, the groundwork has been steadily laid. You could make out the shape of something considerably bigger being built if you looked closely enough. So, it's not a matter of if XRP is potential or not. The question is whether the world will be compelled to acknowledge and utilize it. Neither commercial initiatives nor community buzz are responsible for that recognition. It occurs when the financial system has reached its limit, and let there be no doubt that this limit is rapidly approaching. A new record high has been reached in the world's debt. In the United States alone, interest costs are currently higher than the defense budget. The burden of loans denominated in dollars is causing developing nations to crumble. Due to rising trade tensions, countries are looking for alternatives to SWIFT and dollar settlement. This is not an annoyance, it is a serious flaw in the system's architecture. As soon as the holes enlarge, leaders will rush to use existing resources in an effort to seal them faster. Among the limited number of digital assets that meet that criteria, XRP stands out. Some think governments will never use XRP or any private token. Digital currencies issued and controlled by central banks will be their preferred method of payment. Despite how fair it sounds, that argument fails to take into account an important fact. We can work together. When used alone, CBDCs will have no effect. They can't communicate with fiat and digital currencies without bridges. At that point, an impartial asset for resolution becomes crucial. XRP's role is to link CBDCs, not to replace them. Plus, that function isn't abstract. Pilot programs all across the globe are already testing it. Meanwhile, XRP is beginning to emerge from the shade cast by the law. The fact that XRP sold through a program is not considered a security was established by Ripple's partial court victory. Although it doesn't resolve all issues, the verdict does put XRP in a class that very few tokens can match. Struggled with, but ultimately prevailed. That level of transparency is crucial in a world when the majority of institutions remain on the sidelines due to regulatory uncertainty. Financial institutions and payment processors should be assured that they will not be caught in a regulatory maze if they investigate XRP. Perception is the following missing component. Things start to get intriguing at this point. Opinion pieces and mainstream talks are suddenly presenting XRP as a serious answer to practical financial issues, not fan blogs or speculations posted on message boards. Publications that decision-makers regularly consult are carrying them. Even in private interactions, public narratives have an impact. In private, people are definitely debating XRP if it's being touted as a serious possibility in public. Adoption of financial services always starts in this way, in a low-key manner that gradually gains support until it becomes universally acknowledged. Holders may find this phase to be quite frustrating. The temptation to give up is growing as speculation runs rampant and prices stay low. However, it's possible that the signal is the absence of fireworks altogether. The biggest market swings in the past have followed lengthy stretches of relatively calm accumulation. There has been psychological, legal, and regulatory suppression of XRP for years, and this has resulted in spring-loaded momentum. The relaxation of pressure could cause a swift and massive shift. Staying grounded is crucial, though. Adoption may not occur. Scheduling might be challenging. Possible competing answers could arise. The asymmetric potential, however, is still apparent, even after taking all of that into account. Daily transactions in the foreign currency market alone are in the trillions of dollars. By snatching up even a little portion of that flow, XRP's potential use would go from theoretical to unstoppable. That's the reason why a lot of people still hold, not out of naivete, but rather the logic of what is possible. Looking back at the papers published, the arguments held, and the infrastructure silently being created during this era, we may understand it was the turning point. Not the exact date, but the season in which plans were first made. The fact that the stars are aligning is more important than whether or not October brings a big revelation. These four factors, technological preparedness, regulatory clarity, geopolitical rivalries, and debt stress, are coming together. Even if XRP's future is still uncertain, such convergence sets the scenario for it to take center stage. Those who are paying attention will understand the message. Pay attention, keep yourself updated, and understand the magnitude of what's happening. The wood has been laid out in anticipation of the spark, which could arrive tomorrow, next month, or perhaps next year. The big picture of how XRP could revolutionize the financial system and the implications for holders is laid out in this roadmap that I've prepared for you. If you would want to see all of our previous discussions brought to light in a unified fashion, you can locate the XRP Millionaire Blueprint under the pinned comment that is located beneath this video.